Was it the worst gig ever? No, it was not the worst gig ever. Not in the history of all gigs. A lot worse has happened. And even for me personally, it was not the worst gig ever in my whole history of gigs. However, it was pretty bad. And I'll share with you a little bit about what went on and what made it bad. And so we'll talk about this for a minute. I'm Chris. I hope you're having a great day. And I am a flamenco guitarist, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about an experience I had recently. I had a gig that I was called to do, and as a flamenco guitarist, I accompany flamenco dancers and singers. So if you don't know this, if you happen to just be watching this out of just curiosity, flamenco is, I think, the easiest way to explain the art of flamenco is that it is a language. I can go into depth about that part of it, but instead of that, we will talk about the actual gig. So this was in a theater with probably, 200 to 300 people watching. And but for us, at our point in our career, the nature of this particular gig wasn't a huge deal. Okay, this theater was a local theater for both of us, and we took the gig. And this is something that, as flamenco artists, because the art of flamenco is a language, we can do a performance without any rehearsal. So this is a flamenco dancer. She called and asked me to do this gig with her to play guitar and sing for her flamenco dance performance. And we have worked together, but it's been quite a while, maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years or so. Anyway, but like I said, flamenco, it's kind of like jazz, in a sense where you can get together and play, or anybody who is fluent in a musical language can kind of get together and jam. Well, flamenco artists can do that, even if we have a flamenco dancer who's not a guitar player. So usually guitarists would get together and jam, or you create a band kind of setting and jam. But flamenco dancers or flamenco singers and flamenco guitarists, we can all get together and work together. And we can feel comfortable once you become fluent enough in this language that we can feel comfortable getting up in front of a few hundred people, never having rehearsed or really discuss what we're going to do, and actually do a performance. And usually it comes out really well. This came out really well for the audience, but it was on the backside for us as far as what the audience doesn't know. So I have a couple of notes here. I just want to make sure to be relatively concise in this video blog. So I want to make sure that the terribleness of this gig was not the artistry. Really like working with this flamenco dancer. I've worked with her before, and we'll work together in the future, I'm sure. The tech crew was good. They were young, but they were attentive, and they were really trying their best. The venue is a super nice venue, a very nice theater. And the audience was super cool and super supportive. So nothing there made this gig bad. What made the gig terrible, like one of the worst gigs ever, is that my co-artist and myself were not able to show really what we're able to do as artists, because the flamenco dancers are musicians. They are percussionists, basically. And so with them being a percussionist, it's really important to be able to hear what they're doing. And it's really important for them to hear what I'm doing. And for this gig, we could not hear each other. The main culprit, the heinous culprit, if you will, of this gig was the floor. The floor surface for that particular theater was non-existent as far as a percussive instrument. So imagine being a drummer, being a drummer, like playing a kit, and you go to a venue and they ask you to play on concrete. You're not really going to be able to perform your art very well. Not that she had to dance on concrete, but that floor was set on concrete, and so you could not hear. That sound was just not going to emerge from that floor surface. And we couldn't have known that, unless we had been able to go and try out that theater before. And in the idea of extreme ownership, I don't know if you know of Jacome Flamenco and that book by him and Leif Babin. They wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. So in the idea of extreme ownership, I would say there were two things that we could have done that would have been able to give us more control over the end result, in that we could have done a tech rehearsal, and then we would have found out about the floor. However, we really wouldn't have been able to do anything about that floor. So that's kind of, at least we would have been more prepared. I'll talk about the idea of professionalism in a second. And number two, as far as ownership, I think the other thing that we could have done was rehearsed, but we're going to bring it back to professionalism. So let me talk about, I already did. Tech, we could have teched. We wouldn't have been able to change the floor. We would have just been more prepared for that eventuality. Number two, the dancer and myself, we could have gotten together before and rehearsed, and that would have made us probably feel a little bit more comfortable with our work together. However, now let's say number three is what saved us, is our professionalism. Our level of fluency is at a level, thank goodness, that we are both at that level, that we could cover for each other. And ultimately, as far as artists, it's the audience that kind of gives the thumbs up and thumbs down. For some reason, I have that horrible image from Gladiator. That's not what, thank goodness, that's not what we're dealing with. But, they either like it or they don't. And so the audience loved it. We had a great response. Everybody loved it. So that's great. And that goes to our level of professionalism that we were able to bring despite these extenuating circumstances, challenging circumstances. Even though we couldn't hear each other the exact detail, to near the level of detail where I felt comfortable at all making like really detailed music. I had to do just broad strokes of rhythm and then really focus on the singing and focus on the bigger communicative aspects that she was trying to get across, as far as I want a verse here. I'm going to go to the next section because as a flamenco guitarist, I am following her. And then I was singing as well. So as a flamenco singer, I'm following her as well. So I had to just really look for those cues. Even though I couldn't hear, I was more focused then on her other body cues. And so that all worked pretty well. We had one thing, we had enough time to talk right before the performance. And so we had one part that was part of the piece that we were planning on, and we were number 5 in the lineup. And so we had seen 4 other acts before we went on stage. And I kind of already gauged that those acts were shorter than what we had. Then when we got on there and I was like into our piece, there was another section that I decided to cut just based off of where we were timing wise, and that the artist, the dancer, heard that, was able to hear my singing enough that she knew that I had skipped a section, and she went right into that. Nobody would know that except for us. And I was thanked by her after the performance as far as cutting that section. She was like, that was a great call. But that just shows how professional she was to be able to sell that, to be able to adapt within, maybe 2 seconds of hearing that change. She was able to adapt. I mean, I'd say 2 seconds is a long time. Maybe one and a little bit to be able to hear that change and adapt her movement vocabulary to adjust to that change, to edit that part out. Anyway, so our professionalism saved the day for this one. The audience was none the wiser, which is great. Got a lot of compliments. But for us as artists, it was not, we didn't feel like we were able to actually lock in and be able to show the detail, another level of professionalism that we wanted to be able to show. The audience, I don't know that they would even recognize that, but we would be much happier with our performance. So really, was it the worst gig ever? No, I said it at the outset of the very intro. It wasn't the worst gig ever, but it just, I think both artists, the flamenco dancer and myself, we left feeling like, it's better to just put that behind us and move forward and just chalk it up to, that's the way it goes. We did our best within those particular circumstances and lived with them, and were able to create and put forth a performance that we know that the audience was really happy with. Lots of big applause and lots of great feedback from them. Anyway, so if I could give you a lesson, listen, if you've listened this far, is work on that ability. So this is a guitar channel. If you're a guitarist, it's not just about the guitar. I know that we love the guitar, and it's, we put so much of our own time and effort into it, but really once we get in the performance sphere of it and go into that side of it, it's more about the audience and what they like and what they perceive. And so that has to be, just remember, if you're a performer, you're also not only playing the guitar, but you're also performing. And I would highly recommend that you spend time considering performing. No, I'm not saying you have to. I would just say consider it, and consider what your performance is like and how that is perceived by an audience, and that's an art in and of itself. So recognize that, I think any musician watching this would go, there are fantastic performers that aren't great musicians, and there are fantastic musicians that aren't great performers. And then there are those that are both, that are fantastic musicians and fantastic performers. And if you are going to be able to make a living from your art form as a performing artist, performing musician, and I do this as a guitarist, anyway, so that I would highly recommend that you consider that aspect, that art of performing, and work on your comfortability in front of an audience, and work on thinking about how you are perceived. Maybe videotaping your performance, maybe asking for input from bandmates. I actually had a student recently, I could go into another story about this. It was a younger student that was working towards a talent show. And so we did a lot of coaching on actually the performance aspect, because he is playing guitar really well, but he's very internalized and is not very emotive when he plays guitar. As a solo guitarist, that can really be a big deal as a performer. It helps you engage the audience. Okay, so anyway, that's another subject. The worst gig ever. We survived, and thanks for joining me here on this video blog. I don't do this normally. Normally I'm teaching guitar stuff, but I thought it was something that hopefully you learned something from this experience of mine. And if you don't have or haven't read the book Extreme Ownership, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic book. I really geek out on all that special operations stuff anyway, so it's right up my alley, but it's good for everybody. So if you're into reading a great book about just being able to be responsible for all that you can be responsible for and being a good leader, I highly recommend that book. I wasn't even planning on talking about the book like that, but shout out to Jacome and Leif on that book. So anyway, wishing you a great day. let me know. Always feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions about what I do or how I do it. I'd love to hear from you. And that's it. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.